Hi guys, how are you doing today? Ready for some new stories I've prepared for you today? Let's go to the first one, about OP, who demands her son's inheritance from her husband's parents should be given to her affair child as well. Listen to the story, guys, to find out all the details, and of course to hear my insights. Enjoy the stories, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. My husband, Matt, 52 male, and I, 46 female, have 3 children, a son Andrew, 24, and 2 daughters, ages 12 and 8. When Andrew was growing up, I felt a bit trapped in a role of a stay-at-home mom. Matt was, and still is, a great father, and earned more than enough to afford all the necessities and some luxuries too. We had just purchased a new Infiniti, which Matt had picked out. But I wasn't happy and was seriously considering asking for a divorce. One day I was involved in a minor fender bender while out shopping. I was driving our still fairly new car, and Andrew was with me. None of us were hurt, but neither of the doors on the passenger side of the car could be opened. Andrew was understandably upset, and so was Matt. The guy who hit me, Raul, was actually very nice. We exchanged contact info, and honestly, I really enjoyed talking to him. So I began seeing him whenever Matt and Andrew weren't home. Honestly, I was happier than I had been in a long time, but I eventually felt guilty. I told Raul that I wanted to work on my marriage, so we broke up. I confessed everything to Matt, and he agreed to go to counseling. Around this time, I found out I was pregnant with a baby boy. We did a prenatal DNA test, and it showed that Matt was not the father. I decided to give my son up for adoption after he was born, so that's what we did. Matt and I then had our 2 daughters. I've always felt guilty about the adoption, so a few years ago, I did a DNA test and found my son, Diego. I was horrified to learn that he grew up in foster care and had an unhappy childhood. He always wanted to know his biological parents. He found Raul and has a good relationship with him. I told Diego that I wish things had been different. Matt's parents, who passed away in 2021 and 2022, left half of their estate to Andrew and the other half to be divided between our 2 daughters. To be honest, I thought this was unfair, but it's the way they wanted to do it. The girls will receive their portion of the estate when they turn 18. I have yet to begin distributing the money to Andrew, and the reason why is that I feel strongly that half of his portion should go to Diego. I have told Andrew that I would like to give half of his portion to Diego, because it's the best we can do to make up for the fact that I should never have given him up. He's my son, and the only reason I gave him up is because I thought it was what I needed to do to save my marriage. But he's had a really hard life as a result. Matt has taken Andrew's side, saying that not only is this unfair, but it's against what his parents wrote in their wills. I know that there's the legal aspect, but there's also the moral aspect of me wanting to make up for a mistake I made when I was in a bad place. Matt is now threatening divorce, while Andrew has been saying some really horrible things about both me and Diego to pretty much anyone who will listen. Is what I'm asking such an unreasonable request? Wow. OP is so in the wrong here that it left me speechless for a moment. It's not OP's son's responsibility to pay for OP's mistake. OP is not making it up to Diego. Andrew is. He did not have the affair. He did not give up a child for adoption, and he should not have to pay as a result of OP's actions. OP needs to ask herself, if the money didn't exist, how would she make it up to Diego? Because the truth is, that money doesn't exist because it isn't OP's. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Billy Fly says, "You're the a-hole. You messed up at every angle in this story. Your husband has zero obligation to give anything to your kid that you had outside of your marriage. It's not the kid's fault. Unfortunately, he was put into a crappy situation because of your decisions. If you want to leave anything for Diego, that's completely on you. Why should your husband's family and your son be paying for your mistake? Also, why did your husband buying a car lead you to considering divorce? Seriously." Michigan 90 says, "You're the a-hole. You don't get to ask Andrew to give up half of his inheritance to make yourself feel better about your own ducked-up decisions. Also, this other kid of yours isn't Matt's. He's not entitled to Matt's parents' money." Deleted User says, "You're the a-hole. It's rightfully Andrew's, so it should be his choice. Putting it in his hands is the correct thing to do. Also, Matt's parents had no relation to Diego. I understand you wanting him to have something because you feel you wronged him, but it's up to you to make it up to him. Not Andrew, not Matt, not Matt's parents. My wife Sarah and I got married 2 years ago after dating long distance for a year. I left my job and moved across the country to be with her, and since then, I've been working in her grandfather Jack's company. We have no children and no prenup. Jack and I became very close. He taught me about business and encouraged me to put up my own. When he died last year, he left me a relatively large sum of money, which he said was to help me put up my own business, so I can always take care of my future family with Sarah. He left a separate and larger inheritance for her. I haven't touched the money, because after Jack's death, I decided to stay with the company for a few months to help make sure that ownership and management transition went on smoothly. During that time, my life turned upside down after Sarah suddenly admitted to me that she had an emotional affair that almost turned physical with someone very close to me. We're in therapy to try to fix things. I love Sarah, and I know I have my own faults, but right now I'm not sure that it's working out, and I'm seriously considering if the best thing for both of us is to divorce and start anew separately. If we divorce, I'm not going to ask for any of Sarah's money or properties because it's hers and her family's. But I have a dilemma about the money Jack left me. It's mine legally and will let me have a fresh start when I move back, and I do intend to put up the business that Jack and I talked about. But I know he wanted that business to be the means for me to look after my future family with Sarah, which will not happen if we divorce. Tell me what you guys think. In my opinion, the money Jack left to OP is his. He could not have foreseen that his granddaughter would cheat on OP, but I would imagine if he did, he would not want her to be financially rewarded for doing so, which is effectively what OP giving her the money would be doing. She'd be getting a bonus for destroying their marriage. OP's wife doesn't seem to need the money. OP is not going after her assets. Seems a fair conclusion to me. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Fantastic Son says, not the a-hole. While he definitely wouldn't have given that money to a random coworker to help them, the reason he gave you that money was because of the relationship the two of you had together, not just because of who you were married to. If he solely wanted it to be used to help your family, he would have just included it in his granddaughter's inheritance payment. It was left specifically to you. You choose what to do with it. It's not your fault that your wife did what she did. Seltzer says, not the a-hole. However, just to be safe, you should start protecting your assets now. Establish an anonymous LLC with you as the only signatory officer. Then place all of the money in the self-settled spendthrift trust. Designate the LLC as the trustee of the trust with you as the trustor and the beneficiary. It's all perfectly legal, and your money is now judgment-proof. My husband is terminally ill, and yesterday we were told that he has several weeks to live. I've been my husband's primary carer since being diagnosed 8 months ago, and have been doing everything to support him, including sacrificing my work. A few months ago, we started to develop his will with consultation from a lawyer in estate planning. My husband is leaving a large portion of his estate to family, which I'm very supportive of. As such, his will outlines that his family receives all this money from his estate. The problem is that in Australia, the 401k he has is a primary part of his wealth and is by law left to the spouse, not the estate. That means that to pay for all these gifts, it would have to come out of either selling our home or me using my inheritance money to settle the gifts. My husband is comfortable with the will and in me fulfilling his wishes by either me selling our home or using my inheritance as his partner to settle the gifts. Either way, the gifts are going to be paid and the will is absolutely valid. Tonight, an uncle of my partner turns up from another state and starts explaining the above, stating that the family is at risk of not receiving the inheritance because of the will only including the estate. And emphasis here, by law the spouse is to receive the 401k. Superannuation we call it here. The will specifies I receive anything left after the gifts. He asks me to sign a handwritten deed, stating that I will fund my family's gifts using the 401k money or my own money. In other words, forcing my hand in paying them their gifts, if his estate doesn't cover it. I took great offense to this and stated this is incredibly disrespectful and insulting, especially since my husband didn't ask for this, that he has very limited time and we're wasting it on political and legal issues, and most importantly, that you would question me as his husband and my ability to fulfill my dying husband's final wishes. I quickly broke into tears and left the room and refused to speak to the uncle. Before I left, I said I will review the contract, but not before my lawyer reviews it. My husband was very sad when I left the room and was mad at the uncle for doing this to me. I feel like this uncle is meddling in our affairs as husbands. He is trying to look out for his family, but in doing so, has shown to me the little trust he has in me as my husband picked all these years ago, married, and am now losing. I've seen this uncle a few times a year over the duration of our relationship. Of course I would fulfill my husband's wishes, and my whole life is him. I'm shocked we would spend this time on semantics of how money is distributed, than to be present with my beautiful man in his final moments. Am I the a-hole for not signing this handwritten deed? OP can make this very easy for the uncle. He gets nothing. What a selfish person. But honestly, OP's husband kind of is the worst. His responsibility is to protect OP's financial future, not his family's. Making OP have to give up his home, or the 401k in which he made him the beneficiary, is kind of rude and disrespectful to OP in my opinion. OP sacrificed for him, and he is repaying him by giving away OP's financial stability to his family, and he is adding extra work for him after he will be grieving his loss. Let me know your thoughts on this, guys. And now let's hear the community's opinion. The lead searcher says, "Not the a-hole. Don't sign anything without a lawyer reviewing it." I'm sure even your husband would agree. However, I'm questioning why this family should get everything, even parts of the estate, the 401k, that are legally yours. Does your husband really want you to be left with nothing? Gin and Tonic with Dog says, "Not the a-hole at all. Is your husband really willing for you to lose your home when he dies? Ask him to either support the rest of your life or find someone else to nurse him. If he says he wants you to lose your home as well as your husband, then book cares for him for a few days and take a well-deserved break. If he doesn't care about your life, then you're wasting your time caring for him now. One thing to check is whether your uncle is putting undue pressure on him when he is vulnerable. Is there anyone else from his family that you could check in with?" OP says, "My husband cares for me deeply, so not a doubt in my mind of my placement of love. And the estate value is not insignificant, so I will be well taken care of, even in receiving 50%. My husband wants to leave a special legacy for his siblings who aren't as well off as us both. I earn more than my husband. I respect his wishes. I don't believe we need to be signing things now to validate I will follow through on that promise to him. This uncle is not a recipient in the will, by the way." It has been 2 days since my wedding day. I had already been with him for 4 years, 1 year of which I was engaged. It all started a few months earlier when I noticed my husband Jake watching prank videos. Among other things, these videos showed embarrassing photos of the bride being played on a projector in front of the whole room or the bride's face being smashed into the cake. I told him straight away that I didn't want anything like that at our wedding. He just laughed and said he wasn't planning anything like that. I thought that was the end of it, but I kept catching him making strange arrangements with his friends. He suddenly wanted to choose the wedding photographer and the cake. I thought nothing of it and was just glad that he was helping me with the wedding preparations. Nevertheless, I reminded him the day before that if he did something like that, I would break up with him immediately. When the day of the wedding came, everything went smoothly until the ceremony. Until the moment came when the cake was to be cut. The whole room watched as I made the first cut, and the photographer stood in front of us with camera in hand. Suddenly, I felt a hand on the back of my head, pushing me face first into the cake. Not only my makeup, but the whole wedding dress was ruined, and the whole room laughed, my husband the loudest. At that moment, the photographer took the photo, and Jake said that this was now our wedding photo. I turned around, slapped him in the face, and ran out of the room in tears. Thank God karma didn't take long to arrive and came in the form of his own brother. I ran to the toilet and started crying when I suddenly heard loud shouting from the hall. It was his brother, Frank. I could barely understand what he was saying, and when I left the toilet, he was waiting for me. He told me that Jake had something to tell me. Jake was shaking and apologized without looking me in the eye. Frank told him to look me in the eye and apologize again. Even I was a bit scared of Frank at that moment, because I had always thought of him as a kind and gentle man. I had never seen him angry before. Jake apologized again, And then Frank led us back into the hall, which was suddenly very quiet, and most of our families looked down at the floor a little embarrassed. The festivities were cut short, and I was taken home by Frank because I was too angry with my husband, and I didn't want to see him. During the ride, Frank apologized for blowing up like that. He explained that my husband was horrible, even back when he was a brother, and used every special occasion to humiliate Frank. When it was Frank's birthday, my husband would throw his cake at him and break his presents. But back then, their parents always brushed it off by saying that's just how brothers behave. So he had to endure every humiliation. But when he saw my husband bury my face in the cake, he was fed up because he realized that my husband was just a bad person who got his satisfaction from humiliating others. I asked Frank if he thought it would be an exaggeration if I separated from my husband, and he said no, because according to him, I deserved better, and he didn't care how his brother felt about it, because he had brought it on himself. Then he told me that if I needed help collecting my things, he would help me, and gave me his number. And I decided to separate from him and file for divorce, and inform Jake and my family about it. Jake just told me not to do that, because it was just a harmless prank. I was spammed by both his family and mine that it would be ridiculous to end our marriage over this. But I see it differently. If he does something like this to me despite multiple requests not to do it, even after promising he wouldn't do it, then I can't trust him. No matter what he promises me, I have to assume that the opposite can and will happen, and that he doesn't care at all how I feel about his decisions. This situation can be projected onto so much more worse situations where it would be important for me to be able to trust him. His brother Frank seems to be the only one who supports me now, and I will go through with the divorce. Call me humorless, call me what you want, but I have given my reasons. Well, the first red flag I saw here straight away is that OP even had to ask him to not do that when she saw him watching those videos. It means that she was expecting it from him. I think OP's not in the wrong for divorcing her husband. He can't be trusted. And now let's hear the community's opinion. 10-10-10 Trees says, he lied and was disrespectful. Obviously not the things you want in a marriage. Divorcing him now will save you from dealing with more boundaries being broken and the heartache. You deserve better. Zeldepin says, you told him what the consequences would be. Now he gets to live with that choice. I don't think you have to divorce. If you don't file the marriage certificate within a certain amount of time, you aren't legally married. Just make sure he doesn't file it on your behalf. Bippity Boppity Nope says, that was not a prank. That was meant to humiliate you in front of the people closest to you on what should have been a day of happiness and love. Divorce and don't look back. Actually, you might want to file for an annulment. Then legally, it is like it never happened.